Hey everybody, Justin Luke Riley here with Discovering the Fourth Place. So thrilled to have our latest guest with us. I'm going to take a few minutes to allow you to brag shamelessly about who you are, what your background is, and then we'll jump into really what is Discovering the Fourth Place. And all that to say, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, no, my name is Thomas Carlson or Tom Carlson. I have lived around the world. I've been in the Middle East for about 10 years. I've been doing business all over the world. And currently I am running a business called ECatalyst. We're focused on helping entrepreneurs develop innovative, unique ideas for their businesses so that they can find product market fit and really find success before they go out and spend a ton of money on marketing or websites or various other things that we wind up spending money on in order to try to create success out of something that may or may not be a really good idea. So let's get the idea first.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one of the things that we do on Discovering the Fourth Place is really make sure that we're creating space or a place, no pun intended, to make sure that people know just right off the bat, and it'll be in the links on social, all the things, but how can people get in touch with you if they say, I think I have an idea that's going to change the world, but maybe I'm wrong, and I'm thinking about taking out a HELOC on my home, or I'm getting a $500,000 loan, or I'm going to go get investors. But how can, if anybody's resonating with this already right now, listening to just the first couple of minutes, is how can people get in touch with you so they can understand how you can support them?
Absolutely, yeah. You can find us on our website at www.ecatalyst.org. It'll give you everything you need to know about the Innovation Lab and the Value Lab that we run. Both are 6-week processes. And you can set up a free discovery call there. You can sign up for the labs. We really value doing this in person as much as possible because really the point is that online it's hard to really create community. It's really hard to create a place where we're bouncing ideas off of each other. So when we're in person, we're really being able to ask each other the hard questions and really generate those kind of ideas. That's where you really start creating innovation. So we're trying to do more and more innovation through in-person labs all across the country. You can find out where they are at the website, again, www.ecatalyst.org.
Awesome, cool. And we'll make sure to put that in all the social, and as you get the copies, it'll be fun for you to share that with your world.
Absolutely.
But as we jump into Discovering the Fourth Place, and we're gonna see this kind of meta story throughout the different places, we're gonna start to put together this journey of like, how did you arrive at this place? And are there moments in childhood? Are there moments in your home or previous work experience? Or what are the other gather places? Ironically, the place that we're at used to literally be called Gather. We did not plan that. But how did you become who you are today as a leader? And we're going to first start by asking you, just tell us about growing up. Like, what's your story? What happened?
Sure.
Give you a quick example even for myself.
Yeah.
So it must have been middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, not sure. But my parents put me into a program called Odyssey of the Minds, and that's MINDS, not like School of Minds, MINES.
Okay.
And I first discovered then at a very young age the power, I didn't know it was called this then, but the power of critical thinking. And so, and that really shaped how I looked at the world, how I solved problems. And as simple as it was, this after school club, which was like, there was like the chess club for like the regular nerds, and then there's Odyssey of the Minds for the super nerds.
I was in the chess club actually.
I was in both, to be clear. But I say that to say is they would dump out 15 straws, duct tape, super glue, and some toothpicks, and say whoever can build the strongest structure wins. That's all they would say, and we would go to work. Some people build bridges, they build platforms, they build all kinds of things. Some people just couldn't even get on the same page with people that they were working with. But I say that that's one of my favorite childhood memories that's relevant to my work life today, or my fourth place, where I get to solve problems all day long. And as a young kid, I learned how to look at the world differently. So from that lens, as we also get to know each other, what was something in your childhood that you think, man, as I look back, that probably really attributed to a lot of why I built ECatalyst the way that I did?
So what parts of my childhood really contributed to the way that I participated, or way that I'm doing what I'm doing now? I think one of the big things was when I was a sophomore in high school. I had a girlfriend that I'd been with for about a year at that point, and my family was going to move to Germany for 5 months. Now, when I was a sophomore in high school, 5 months was nigh on eternity, and it was a really hard leaving process. It was hard to say goodbye to her. It was hard to say goodbye to all my friends. I just figured I was going to be gone for years as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, your life is over.
It was.
Yeah.
It was like my entire social life was just done. They had a huge. My girlfriend actually threw this huge party at the skating rink. This is back in the
There
day.
you go.
And rented out the whole skating rink. I had a bunch of friends that were there. They surprised me with it. It was amazing. This was right when Footloose was coming out. She had told me we were going to go see Footloose.
Yep.
And then we wound up going to the skating rink, and she managed to weasel me in there with her sister, pretending that she'd forgotten her purse. But anyway, the whole point is that process of going there was tough. I had been learning German for about 3 years in sort of high school German, as it were. We had started actually in middle school a little bit because we knew this was going to happen at some point. But still, it didn't even come close to preparing me for actually showing up. In fact, I remember, I'm going to wind up telling too many stories here.
It's all good. It's all good.
I remember like my mom did not know how to pack light. We had more luggage than we needed for the next 3 or 4 years, which contributed to the feeling that we're going to be too long over there. And we landed in, I think it was Frankfurt. We took 3 different trains to get there. We had to load all of this luggage from one train to another. And the last one was getting onto this little commuter train that was just going 3 blocks, and then we were gonna get off at our next location. And so I was running, we had 5 minutes. I was running, just throwing all of this luggage, into the commuter train. Everybody else has got a purse or a briefcase, and we've got this mound of luggage. And finally got there. I'm sweating. I'm 14 years old. And this old woman, just as we're about to get off, grabs my shoulder and says, "Hey, woher kommst du?" Which means, where you come from. Simple. I mean, about as an easy a German phrase as you could do. I froze. I mean, 3 years of German, I had nothing. I just, I finally was able to squeeze out America. That was because that's, the word for
I would have maybe
America.
gone with just USA, but that's fine. Yes.
It was insane. But those 5 months really taught me to get out of my comfort zone in a way that I just don't know that I'd really done before. I mean, I always loved trying new things. I always loved experimenting with things, but I learned about culture in a way that I just never really seen it before. And the chance to be able to not just experience another culture, but to really invest in, to be able to develop friends in German, to be able to speak German at German high school. It just really changed my whole worldview in some tremendous ways. I think there's something that it did for me at that point that made me want to live in that kind of intercultural space where really learning how to communicate with other people in ways that aren't just natural to our own cultural context. And I loved that. I just absolutely loved that process. I love the idea of being able to connect with people that were different. And it changed the way that I thought about the world, I suppose. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really heard from that entire experience was you started to learn that you liked what I would call friction or conflict. A lot of folks talk about conflict as also certified mediator, fun fact. But conflict is not, I'm mad at so-and-so.
Absolutely.
Conflict it's friction, it's abrasion, and that can be an amazing thing. That's where innovation comes from, right? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, I could give like a really cheesy, fire analogy, right? Of like, friction and like the little spark, but just simply speaking, you're somebody who loves to now be in a space, because what I hear is you've now recreated the German experience that you had as a young adult, saying, I'm in a foreign place, I've been kind of prepared, but I'm now going to be put in the fire to see what it's like to now survive in this different environment. And you found that you really like that. So now as a professional, you're sitting here saying, I'm going to sit with people all day long that have these huge business ideas, or some of them maybe even small ideas, but mighty. And I'm going to be in a space and run a process with them that may push up against and create friction against something they hold near and dear. They say, well, I want to open up the dog washing horse carriage school for the blind. And you're like, what? That's not even a thing. That's 4 things, and you shouldn't do any of them. Most people wouldn't say, I want to be in a business where essentially, and no pressure if you work with him, he's very nice about it. But this guy is going to say, You need to defend your idea, and this process is going to also objectively let you know whether you just have a passion or a cause or you have a company. Because there's a big difference between having a cause and having a company. And part of your process that you started to do early on in life is I'm comfortable in that space. I'm comfortable sitting across from somebody saying, yeah, that doesn't really sound like a business yet.
No,
Again, you have a process.
No, I
right?
think that's actually you just nailed a number of things that I don't think I was even articulating in my answer there. I feel like
that's why I get to be the host.
You did a fantastic job. I think I think that there's a place where that process really did it. I mean, when you define conflict as that friction, and when you define conflict in terms of a need to solve a problem. I think that there was something about that I was coming into a context that I was not familiar with, asked to communicate, to be part of relationships that I wasn't prepared for. I mean, I was prepared for as much as you can be prepared when you've never left your culture. But when you get into another culture, suddenly you're being asked to put yourself out there in a way that you're not even familiar with the context that you're going into yet. And yet somehow you still got to do it. And so I think that process of really figuring out how do we communicate in a way that really creates the kind of solutions to the problems that are being presented in this context.
That's good.
And cross-cultural communication, I think, does that because the problem is we don't understand each other. And we need to understand each other. So how do I communicate in a way that actually says what I want to say, but in a way that you can hear it truthfully or authentically to the intention that I actually bring to the table.
Oh, that's good.
So I think so when you're talking about business, yes, absolutely. It's the same kind of thing. There's a huge difference between a hobby or a passion project or a nonprofit and a for-profit.
Yes.
And the main difference is that a for-profit, you need to not only be able to solve a problem, you need to be able to solve a problem with enough value that somebody else is willing to give you value in exchange for that in terms of money or in terms of influence or in terms of something else. But there has to be an exchange of value, which means that the value you bring needs to be communicated in a way that person, that customer, that that service provider understands and feels the value to the extent that they're willing to trade value for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've said a few times now we're kind of transitioning already organically in a great way from that first place being home and growing up in Georgia and loving the Bulldogs. And I don't do sports, as a lot of folks know, but good job. Good job. Sounds like that was a good team to pick.
Absolutely. Herschel Walker. This was my growing up. So
fascinating. So in addition to that, then you have this amazing German experience and you come back and girlfriend, did you marry her or what happened?
What?
Did you marry that girl or not?
No.
Okay.
That was long.
Doesn't always happen.
Long before.
Okay, cool.
Long before.
So then, but now we're already starting to get back into the work mode of answering, which is good, right?
Yeah.
So, but I say that to say is, now this is fun, and you didn't necessarily know that we were going to go to this place in the work conversation when we talk about the second place being work, right? First place home, second place work.
Sure.
What are the things that you enjoy? Yes, that'll be your first question. But then the second one, or what are the things, where are you stuck? Where are you frustrated? And this is really important because it's one thing to do a podcast or a social media post. And again, we do it right away. Hey, here's the guy, meet him, greet him, hire him, do a bunch of work with him. That's awesome. But if you're listening or watching this online, you know that leadership, and we hear this all the time, leadership is lonely. It's lonely at the top. I'm not dismissing those comments. They're just really popularized. Sure. But let's talk about when we answer the what do you enjoy, we're also going to talk about what are your challenges, because I have grown most as an entrepreneur, multiple business owner, nonprofit, for-profit, is when I hear somebody who is successful, who's crushing it, who has a process, who has a business, right? Who's traveled the world, also kind of bear their leadership soul and say, even right now, today, these are some areas that I'm just getting my butt kicked in this second place, because I find a lot of people can not only relate to that, but it gives them permission to be open with you to say, well, I actually have had, for you and your business, for instance, I have had this idea. I do think it'll change the world, but a buddy of mine, we actually had a dinner last year with somebody who had, I think, had an idea for 23 years and had never gone more than $100,000 in revenue.
Wow.
And that's no shade, no shame. Like, hey, stuff happens.
Yep.
But there's somebody listening and watching that has been sitting on an idea saying, I know I'm supposed to be changing the world, but there's also a leadership reason that they haven't taken action in 10 to 20 years. That's an issue. So I just say that to say sometimes people will be honest about that when they see the gentleman who's going to help them also communicate their challenges. But before we get challenges, I wanted you to be able to think about that, is tell me about what's going well and what do you just love about work right now? What's really fueling you?
No, those are great questions. I think the things that I really love about work, I love what I do because I love working with entrepreneurs. I love the process of innovation. I think entrepreneurs are some of the most creative people that are out there. They're the people that are trying to solve problems, bring creative solutions to the world, to the market. They're trying to bring something that they love to people that don't know that they love it yet, but they need to do it in a way that genuinely changes that context.
That's good.
So I love thinking with people. I love solving problems with people. I love challenging people about the things that they assume are true, helping them to really think beyond their own space.
Solver, you're the guy. You love entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
We are interesting, whether it's to work with or to do life with. It is not always easy. So that's awesome that you're called to support entrepreneurs, because I know that that's not an easy call sometimes. So speaking of that, what are some of the challenges? Like, real talk, it is recorded, all the things. Like, dude, where are you stuck in your business? Like, I know that in my businesses, in each one, I can think of 2 or 3 things that I would love to be different or better or be at the next level. So what are the pain points that you have in your business today?
So pain points that I have in my business today are some of the same pain points that I'm training others to overcome, which are really, how do we bring what this value? I know that we have so much value, but we are changing the way we do business right now. And so trying to figure out, how do we deliver this value in a way that people appreciate and understand that value? It's the cross-cultural communication. It's that same process of trying to help people understand, I know what I've got can benefit you, but that doesn't mean that you know what I've got will benefit you. So how do I communicate to you that what I've got really will change, will rock your world? I feel like it will. I believe that you come into this context, it's going to rock your world. But you don't know that yet. So how do we communicate that? So that process has been a challenge.
We could do an entire podcast just on taking the value that you have and learning how to communicate about that to somebody so they understand it.
Oh my gosh.
There have been multiple times that I've been fortunate enough, when I've had some resources to be able to spend significant amounts of money to work with somebody to help me do that, because it's one thing to know that this podcast room is the greatest ever, right? But if I don't know how to explain the value of this room to somebody who has a real problem to have a new desire, they're not going to show up, right? Absolutely. And so I can relate to that. I've been there. I'm even there some ways in some businesses I'm in right now. Like, I know that what we do works. How in the marbles do I let folks know, without being too salesy, without being weird, to say, I don't want to do this, but I do, just trust me. If you hire us, I promise we'll help you. But that doesn't sound very strong. So what are some things that you're trying right now that you think other people could even try to say, I have value, I need to communicate it in a different way so people understand it? And ultimately, let's be real here, so I can get more customers.
Absolutely. I mean, part of what I think, so we're restating the question here. So how do we communicate the value that we have is basically what you're asking. And how are we learning to do that? It's interesting because up to this point, up to about 6 or 8 months ago, we were doing this as a nonprofit. And a nonprofit is a very different thing than a for-profit.
Absolutely.
I assumed, I've worked with nonprofits before, I've run for-profits. I figured how hard can running a nonprofit actually be? It's harder. It's different, and the main reason it's different is that the buyer is not the end user. That's the main difference in a nonprofit, and it's tricky. There's a different communication of value. So when we're switching over to a for-profit, part of what I'm doing right now is, like I said, all the things that I'm training other people to do, which is how do you communicate this value to other people? I think the challenge of this is that it is an iterative process. You've got to put something out there. You've got to try it out, and people will respond positively or not so positively, and then you've got to adjust it. And it's a cycle that you can never completely finish. A lot of people think of iteration as just, a linear step-by-step. Okay, we do it. We do a big chunk, then we do a smaller chunk, then we do a smaller chunk, and we get closer and closer. I think of it much more like a spiral, that we're running around the thing that I want, that communication, that value proposition is somewhere in the middle, and we're sort of cycling around it. We're getting closer and closer and closer, but it just, we're never going to hit it absolutely. I mean, I suppose there are a few companies out there that have, but the vast majority of companies never hit it absolutely. But when we get close, we start knowing it, because you can see people's hunger growing in their eyes. You can see that desire start to just develop in their own kind of psyche, that they actually want what it is that you're getting, that what you're giving.
Well, I'm even just, as you're saying that, I'm trying to think of an example of a company that did, quote unquote,
Just
get it
nail
right.
Right.
And then they're set forever, all the way down to, just how I think, all the way down to a toothpick company. Like, think about the simplest, such a simple product.
Right.
But there actually are a lot of innovations. Like,
Sure.
there's 1,000 different toothpicks. There's plastic, there's wood, there's materials, there's metal, there's kids.
There's mint flavor. Yeah. Yeah.
So the companies that make it,
Right.
such a random example, I know toothpicks, but whatever, down to the kind of cliche company, or the cliche example companies of, well, of course, Apple is always innovating. Of course, Amazon is always innovating.
Sure.
Even Tesla came out with basically the exact same car with different headlights, but that's fine. I actually have one, so no shade. But the point is that innovation and iteration and coming up with ideas and having $1, $10, $100 experiments and saying the definition of success is not, here's my product and service, done, now let's see who wants it. It is, how do I continually bring value? How do I continually stay ahead of where my customers want to be, even down to people that we look to in our world of being, podcasters, of saying, what is Hermosi doing, right? Like, what is Brunson doing? Like, how are they communicating? What is, the local legends, Josh 40, what is he doing? Like, what are people doing to continually stay ahead of the game, to meet their clients, not only where they are, but then also not to leave them there. To say, hey, I know you reached out because you have an idea that you want me to validate, but really you need a business model that supports the continuous iteration of different ideas on an ongoing basis. Because you may think you need $50,000 to get to the next level, but that's $50,000 for an idea, not $500,000 to run an entire company, right? So all that to say is, we could both talk about this all day, but let's now move on to the third place.
Okay.
Your gather place, not literally gather again where we are.
Actually, can I
Oh,
make
please, go ahead.
quick comment on
Sure.
the other one? I mean, one of the examples that I love is Netflix. And I remember Netflix, before they really became a digital company, they were competing with Blockbuster.
Yes.
And they were selling DVDs. They were renting DVDs. So they were entering the renting DVD business. And they didn't change the product at all. It was the same product that Blockbuster was delivering, but they delivered it differently, and
well
they
said.
paid for it differently. They paid for it as a monthly subscription rather than a one-off every time you rent a DVD. The delivery system became the U.S. mail rather than going to the place, and it revolutionized the industry. So they completely transformed that industry, not by changing the product, but by innovating the delivery and the payment system. And it completely changed everything. Now they're still doing the same delivery, but they're delivering digitally.
Yep.
And so they had to innovate again. They had to change it again. Again, they're not changing the product. It's still movies. Now they've added stand-up comedy, and they've added, series, and they've added a lot of other things. But it's still basically content delivery. but they've innovated the way that you deliver.
Sure.
And that's part of the process, is that even without changing the product, you've constantly got to innovate, because Blockbuster, who was convinced that they're never going to have to change anything, completely went out of business because the innovation surpassed them, not for their product, but for the way that it was brought to the market.
Sure. Well, we know there's the Kodaks of the world. I mean, there's
Kodak would be
tons of
another
companies
good
that
example.
said, no, I actually do like my product. I do like my idea. I'm never changing. And they were put out of business, right?
Yep.
And so the other thing I would say that Netflix and other companies like that have done is not only have they innovated the delivery mechanisms and, you know, been ahead of the curve, or even created trends, one could say, is that they have equally, and this gets a little bit into blue ocean strategy for those of you that are familiar. I will not talk about Southwest Airlines, I promise, even though I totally could, companion status. But it isn't just the innovation, it's also profit maximization, right? And I'm not trying to just use the fancy words, but I mean, really, like, we know, why do you think that there's all these now Netflix-produced shows?
Right.
Because they make the most margin by doing that.
Right.
That they realize that not only can I keep delivering content of all the content creators, but those fees that we're paying them for content and access and licensing and credits and rights and all these things, well, if we did that internally, and I do love this, just give me 2 minutes here, folks, listen to this, this is a really good one, I promise, is that not only did they realize if we create our own content that we're going to make more money, but because of the data that we have on how long people watch, how frequent, what they binge, what they're into, they could predict literally what the American psyche wanted to watch next, which is how they came up with creating House of Cards, the show. So they use all the data that they had. So it wasn't just innovative delivery. It wasn't just, we're going to make more money if we make a show by ourselves. It's not only we're going to make a show by ourselves and deliver it innovatively, is we're going to use all the data that we have to say that the American psyche, you know what they want to watch right now? They want to watch a political drama where the power brokers at B are up to no good, and there's some addiction, and there's some, you know, romance, and there's some, but if we do that, because we can see what everybody's watching and their watching patterns, we're going to build the next show that they want to watch that they don't even know that they want it.
That's amazing.
And so that is 5 steps ahead. But to promote you again, because it's important we do that, is this is not about innovating a product or idea. It is innovating a product or idea and the business model around it.
Absolutely.
Because if you just walk away from an experience with ECatalyst and he were to just say, yes, this is the best MVP that you're going to have for version 1, good luck, go to market, have fun. It's here's a business model that allows you to say, we went to market with this, but we actually know we're in the business of doing this, and we're going to have a company, not a product.
Right.
Is that fair?
No, that's absolutely fair. I mean,
feel free to hire me for your marketing, but go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, I think one of the things that we talk about is the full life cycle use case, and it's really a 10-step process. Whether you're buying a candy bar, whether you're buying a car, you're going through the same process of becoming aware of the fact that you have a need. You're looking at options. You're beginning to think through. Even after you've made a decision, you're beginning to compare that decision to other things just to find the value in that decision. Each one of those steps, you pay for it, you know, all the way to telling other people about that product. You know, so that full life cycle use case, if you take any one of those 10 steps and you find a market-changing innovation for that particular step, it can completely transform your business, and you can change the way that market interacts based around what it is that you've done. This is the way Netflix did it. They figured out 2: payment and delivery. Those are the two places in the full life cycle use case that they completely transformed, and it changed the entire industry. It wasn't the product. They had this exact same product that the competitors did, but they changed the way they delivered it. You know, and so I mean, I think that's part of what when we talk about innovation, we're talking about that. That it's not about coming up with a completely unique product necessarily. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it's really about taking that same product and delivering it in a way that people wanted, but they never knew they wanted. And that's where you really have to understand your customer, like Netflix did. If you understand your customer so well that you know what it is that they want, you can understand the pain points, the frustration points that maybe even the customer doesn't know that they have. Then suddenly you can start bringing products to them or deliver your products in a way that they recognize as, oh, this is different. This is it. It may still be DVDs, but it changes the way that I consume the material that I'm consuming. Yeah.
Why? I mean, I remember being, and we can move on from Netflix, but I'll say, I remember being a kid and be like, oh man, like I'm going to actually go check the mail today to see if my movie, like they changed the whole, I don't know, even energy excitement around, getting content. So anyway, but okay. So one of the things that's super important though, is because like we're super businessy and entrepreneurs and, we have the great childhood story and, why ECatalyst is super money, look them up, work with them. But you're also human. Like you're a dude, you're bro.
It is true.
So let's talk a little bit about the third place. Because when we talk about, so the reason, if you haven't picked up on it, the reason why these places matter is because when we talk about the holistic nature of a healthy leader, a healthy entrepreneur, a healthy business owner, is we know that home is a thing. We know that work is a thing, but there's also gather. And before we kind of, tell on ourselves and talk about discovering the fourth place, it's really important to know that, like, what are these places? Because there are plenty of people out there that even do just go home, work, home, work, home, work, home, work, and there is no other places. So that could be, like, for me right now, I'm training for my first marathon ever, and it is like, but I'm doing it. And I'm even telling telling on myself on camera, so everyone knows I have to do it and hold myself accountable, right? But tell me a little bit about what are your gather places? Like, where are you just being a human, rocking your cool Keens, going on hikes maybe? I'm not sure. What's up?
I think, my third place, well, I've got a few third places, but I think more important about what the third place is why the third place is, as it were. I think one of the things that I really valued, so I lived in the Middle East for almost 10 years. Both my kids were born over there. And one of the things that I realized in the course of being in a cross-cultural context for that long. And by the way, I loved it. I absolutely loved my time over there. People are amazing. When people say, well, you lived in the Middle East, there's an assumption that you're in this hostile place and you're having to fight for your survival. That's
because that only happened twice, right?
What?
No, I'm just kidding. No, you're good. You're good.
I was in the Persian Gulf. I was actually about an hour and a half outside of Dubai, across the border in Oman, and it's more of an Arab village. And just some of the most genuine, most hospitable people I've ever lived with. I loved my time over there. So it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it, but there is something about living cross-culturally. I was explaining this to a guy, a friend of mine that was up in Minnesota. We were sitting at a Starbucks, and I was saying, when we're here at this Starbucks, I know I'm at home. I know exactly what this culture looks for. I know how to cross my legs here. I know how to talk with you. When I stand up, I know exactly how to order. I feel like I know everything about this. I don't have to think about my language. I don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to understand me. All of these things are just natural. And so I can really relax here. If I'm at the same Starbucks in Dubai, I'm constantly thinking about how I'm on. Am I pointing my foot at somebody? The sole of your foot is in the Middle East is a dirty thing. So if you point your foot at somebody else, it's actually kind of insulting. So you don't do that.
Sure, that makes sense.
But when you're not used to that, or even when you're used to it, after 10 years, I'm still used to it. But I'm constantly having to think, oh, don't point my foot at somebody.
Yeah.
I don't want to cross my leg. You don't cross your foot at the ankle because that's pointing your foot at somebody. So you always cross at the knee. So all of these sort of cultural symbols. When I stand up and I want to order, what culture is the guy across the table from me? Is he Pakistani? Is he Indian? Is he going to be Arab? If I run into one of my Arab friends, I've got to switch languages and start thinking in Arabic. So there's a level of stress that is kind of you're always on. And that's what the cultural sort of conflict, the cultural stress that comes in is that sort of process of you're sort of constantly thinking, you're constantly on. There's a similarity, I think, when we're entrepreneurs. Because when we're entrepreneurs, everything we do matters at a level that when you're an employee, it doesn't.
Truth.
Okay? In the sense that if I have a bad day as an employee and I don't get everything accomplished, the business is going to go on. Or if the business doesn't go on,
or it's somebody else's.
or it's somebody else's
It's somebody else's problem to figure out.
If I don't generate enough revenue, I'm still going to get my salary. I'm still going to get my paycheck. But when we're entrepreneurs, everything hangs on everything that I'm doing. So there's a place where, all the ups and downs that you have during a day in some other context, as an entrepreneur, there's just more weight attached, which means they just get higher. The roller coaster becomes a much steeper, much more involved process. So I think the third space, when I was living overseas, the third space became very, very important. That I knew I had to have time off. Because if I didn't make sure that I had,
I'm not worried about crossing my legs, but go ahead, time off. Go ahead.
If I didn't make sure I had some Sabbath time, if I didn't make sure that that I had some space where I could genuinely unplug and even be aware of my unplugging, that am I just consuming shorts on YouTube? Or am I genuinely doing something? Am I doing something? I mean, we didn't have shorts back then, but am I doing something that is genuinely refreshing? There's something about that process of refreshment I think is so important. So when you ask the question of what's that third space for me, I have a number of them, but I think the most important thing is that I take the opportunity to take those spaces.
That's good.
So hiking is a huge one for me.
Nice.
I do a lot of hiking just by myself. For me, hiking by myself particularly is a chance for me to let my brain just go.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like being in the shower. It's just, I don't have a particular agenda I have to think through. My brain can just do whatever it needs to do. And some of my best thinking is done when I don't actually have an agenda to think about.
That's a big reason why I love long distance running, because one of my buddies here say this all the time. It's like, it's me versus me. Nobody's out there. Nobody. Last night I ran 5 miles, right? And I ran around Daniels Park, and it was actually a really good run last night, but no one knows. No one knows if it actually was a really hard run, and I walked a mile, which I did not, right? But the point of that is I'm not performing for anybody.
Right.
It'd be a really bad performance, like this chunky dad running around, Daniels Park, right? But there's such a mental reprieve from being able to do that, because I also really resonate with what you said around as an entrepreneur. I was actually just talking to one of the team members we have that manages my schedule yesterday, and I'm like, I can attribute literally 2 years ago now, having taken a call with this one person in this one place, it has now been more than $2 million of revenue from that one call. I had no idea who that person was when I met him. I had no idea. I mean, it was a classic, hey, Justin Luke Riley, so nice to meet you. Here's so-and-so. I would love for us to hop on a call. And I'm like, and those are really hard for me in this season, but I don't want to stop, because as being an entrepreneur,
you don't know.
That could be a $2 million call.
You have no idea.
I own my first commercial property because of that relationship that came from hi, my name is Justin Luke Riley. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And now here we are 2 years later, and my life has been transformed financially from that. So how do I just ignore somebody wanted to talk with me? But that also doesn't mean that I'm going to stop running in that moment, take the business call, because I have this fear of missing out, that if I don't do this call, I'm going to miss out. Well, I just can't control everything, right? So that makes a ton of sense about making sure that you have third places. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. When I was running even at the height of my running career, I never could just let my brain go, because I was so focused on just keeping on running.
Yes.
Well, I mean, when you can get into, congratulations being able to get into that kind of shape. I know some guys who are long distance runners who talk about that in running. Running just never did that for me. And it was good. It was great exercise.
Yeah.
But it was never a chance for my brain to go, because I felt like I was having to focus on just keeping going,
Well,
Whereas,
and sometimes I'll have a run though where that's good for me though. Where it is, I cannot focus about anything else except I had a miscalculation in training. I did 16 miles the other day, which is not a humble brag. It was a miracle. I did 16 miles the other day, but I was actually only supposed to do 12. But in order for me to actually do 16, there was no way for me to think about anything else.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of for me at least, sometimes a benefit to where if that workout, if that third place, or if it's a third place moment with my kids, where I'm watching such a fun movie with my kids at a drive-in movie theater.
Right.
I got these 3 little kids. They're all the little liabilities, breaking stuff and stealing sugar from each other, trying not to hit it. I have to be so focused on my third place activity at that point in time. I can't think about work,
Yep.
which is good.
Yep.
So I digress.
No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I think it really is that process of unplugging, of being able to give your brain a break, because the mental stress of having to maintain a certain level of either performance, like cross-culturally, that's part of it, is that there is a cross-cultural performance that you're on all the time. When you're an entrepreneur, I think there's a sense in which everything you do matters. And that stress, that sort of weight that sort of hangs on your activities is part of what makes the mental process of being an entrepreneur, of being this kind of being in a cross-cultural situation. It forces a level of stress on you that you don't necessarily have when you're an employee. Now, that doesn't mean I want to be an employee. I actually don't. I like
Amen.
being an entrepreneur. I love owning my own stuff. I love creating things. But it is stressful, which means that third space becomes all the more important.
Sure, that's good.
We've got to get off and just get into a place. I try to take at least one day a week where I just don't think about work.
That's good.
I just need that space. Even if it's just watching movies or just
Sure.
zoning out all day long, it's got to be something that's a break.
Yeah.
And then getting out and doing some hiking, getting out and going. I'm hoping to go backpacking with my son next week.
Nice.
I think all of that is part of the process of self-care that you have to be deliberate about. You can't, if you're doing self-care accidentally, you're not doing it well.
No, that's good. As we begin to wrap up and we
Yes.
talk about the fourth place, it's
Yes.
really important. Don't worry, we're going to ask you again to
Okay.
tell everybody, hey, especially for those of you that have listened to the whole thing, please don't forget what we said at the beginning. This is how you can get in touch with Tom and work with him. That's coming up here in a second. But tell us about the fourth place, right? And this is really, I'm actually going to read a quote. It comes from the company I work with, is where passion and motivation collide with a determined resolve to experience the life designed just for you. It's truly
That's
the
beautiful.
freedom place.
That's beautiful.
That's written by one of our co-owners, Monty L. Hip.
Okay.
And that's how he defines the fourth place. And so with that, good luck trying to beat that quote. But with that, how would you describe your fourth place? And so describe, your fourth place for us, and then remind folks how they can get in touch with you.
Okay. So first of all, love the fourth place concept. I think so many people that I know, I mean, even good friends of mine, people that I meet, I feel like they live in those first three places. We go to work, we go to home, we get some rest in, and that's it. And then we rinse and repeat. And there's no real sense of passion or purpose or direction. That if there is, it's an off to the side thing. I volunteer at the homeless shelter once a month, or I do something else. I think finding that passion, I think, is just so important. For me, it's really helping entrepreneurs, particularly helping entrepreneurs in the developing world. I love helping entrepreneurs everywhere. I really do. I enjoy the whole process. That's part of the reason we're doing it here. But there's a need in the developing world for middle-income businesses like there really isn't in the U.S. There's so many resources for middle-income businesses in the U.S. And I think there's not that many that are really in that innovation space, which is part of the reason I feel like we're bringing something to the world that's of real value that's not being done in a lot of other places. But in the developing world particularly, if you look at a graph of the missing middle, and you can actually see one of these on our website. If you look at under our why, there's a whole video on the missing middle. But so much of the economy is either in the micro business space or it's at the very top in the telecom company and the oil company and the really big companies, most of which are run by either the ruling party or the ruling family or members of or distant relatives of the ruling family. And there's nothing in the middle, which means that there's no chance to really grow up into that middle income, that small and medium enterprise kind of space, which means jobs aren't being created. And it means that everybody is either living in micro business or at the top. And yet when we as Westerners come over to try to do economic development, we're usually either doing micro business or we're doing impact investing. And we're not really helping the middle. So part of my passion is to be able to take what we're doing with entrepreneurs here in the U.S., that process of overcoming the fear. And the reality is that most of us as entrepreneurs, we're afraid. We're all afraid. You know, we need that space to be able to find some level of confidence and innovation and assurance from other entrepreneurs that we're onto something, and that we have a product, and finding that product market fit is so key as far as being able to develop the process of doing a good business. So in the developing world, I feel like it's even more important, because that's where we're really changing the culture. And so even doing it here, part of the challenge is to be able to take what we're doing and then use the profits that we're doing that with to actually do some of the same stuff over there in a way that genuinely changes economies. So
this may be a cliche way to say it, but it's almost as if you were the not Toms of shoes, but Toms of businesses, right? So here you are validating companies here in the U.S., and you don't need to do this as a customer of ECatalyst, but what ECatalyst then does is say, for essentially putting words in your mouth, if that's okay, is for every business we're validating here in the U.S., we're essentially validating another business, not a micro business or somebody who's just trying to allocate another $10 million over for, innovative impact investing diversification, but a real business that's actually going to create jobs and upward mobility and economic sustainability for families and eventually communities. And so what's really great about your fourth place is it really has connected not only your business and so much of your upbringing and stories and gather places, but to really say that this is something that we're doing day to day and around the world. And that's awesome. That's not always the case. We don't do that. So that's amazing that you do, that you have an opportunity to say the work we're doing here, we're making sure that there's sustainability and multiplication happening with that. So in closing, remind folks.
So if you are interested in this at all, either as an entrepreneur trying to create that innovation, if you are worried that your business isn't actually hitting the market, that you've put all the money into SEO, you've put the money into the websites, you've done all the marketing stuff right, and you're still not selling, maybe there's some place where you really need to develop an innovation that really, it's not just being able to set the world on fire if you don't have a fire yourself. If you don't actually have something of value that you're bringing, that the world can recognize as value, that's where we want to work with you, is a sense that building of an innovation that's new, that's changing the market. So that's what we're trying to do, and you can find us at www.ecatalyst.org. And again, everything that we're doing is not just working with entrepreneurs here, it's working with entrepreneurs over there as well. So really trying to change the economic livelihoods of people, both here and ultimately over there, in a way that just transforms economies.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for being on Discovering the Fourth Place. Amazing global impact leader here in Colorado and around the world. Thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome to get to know you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.